And
And
we
we are
are
live.
live. This is always kind of like the exciting bit, or the bit filled with the most anticipation, because you're thinking to yourself, who's coming, who's not coming, who's going to say hi, who won't say hi. But I'm really, well, it says already that there are 3 people here. I wonder who they are. Please do say hi. And I'm not going to say too much, but I am particularly excited about this topic from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective. So the excitement is oh so real. So usually I just wait a couple of minutes, because we're actually early today. So I give it a couple of minutes, and then sometimes people say hi, sometimes they're a little bit too shy, which is okay. No, we don't bite.
No.
We don't. Well, not now, but but we are ready for anybody to say hi if you feel like it. Of course, as always, we welcome questions, suggestions, and definitely feedback. We always like feedback. That's like the healthy way for us to progress. One piece of feedback that I did get recently, and it's very valid, is if we use any acronyms, hi Mana, if we use any acronyms, then please do explain what they are, just in case there's anything that's not clear. Hi Priya Brata, just in case anything's not clear. So that was like one piece of feedback that I had.
That is good. That is good, because it's so easy to just talk in jargon, and then you think you're really smart, but actually no one can follow you.
Yeah, but it's also it's an assumption, and it's an assumption that makes a mistake, because you think, oh yeah, it's obvious to me, but it's not obvious to anybody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, I still remember seeing when I can't remember when this was, maybe like a few years ago, I remember seeing WIP, and I was like, what is this WIP? Why do people keep writing WIP? What is WIP? Have they done VIP wrong? It's like work in progress. I didn't realize that. Hi, John.
Hi, John. Apparently it happened quite often now in COVID, when couples work together, and then you can hear your significant other talking, and then they go and speak in a business language. It's almost like they're a different person to who you know. And then I think there is a quote, and she said it was hilarious. She's like, I didn't realize I was married to a let's circle back on this guy.
That's also like one of my bugbears. That is one of my, but let's circle. And I realized I also don't like touch base, but I also use it. It drives me nuts. But but I'm going to give everyone a warm welcome. So thank you for those of you who've said hi. For those of you who are too shy to, we're still here, so don't worry. You can feel free to let us know you're here whenever you like. In case anybody doesn't know me, so I'm Leanne Meyer. I am the Managing Director and Principal of LM Consulting, and we specialize in gender representation in senior leadership, specifically focusing in financial services. But we also make sure, because we believe in gender representation being for all women, we also make sure that Black women aren't forgotten in this process. So that's what we do. And today I am really genuinely so excited, because the topic, I was saying, in case anyone missed it, the topic that we're talking about today, unlocking your own success, is an important one from a business side, but also one for me personally, just because there's so much you learn in going through your career. There's so much that you wish you knew in hindsight. And the beauty of it is sharing it now, sharing it with others. So without further ado, I have to introduce my amazing guest for this week, and that is Melanie Meyer. We have the same surname, by the way. I just
Spelled differently.
Spelled differently. Mine's a South Tyrolean way. But I'm really happy to have you here. So if you could introduce yourself to everybody, and then we can kick off.
Yeah, thanks for that lovely intro. And there's someone else. Hi, Pierre.
Yeah. Hi, Pierre.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. I'm Melanie, and I'm really wearing 2 hats. So on the one side, I'm a career and leadership coach, and I help people and support people in doing exactly what we're going to cover today, managing your career proactively, taking that next step, going on to that next level, whatever that means for you. And then from there, planning your next steps, because it never ends. It's like when you said unlocking something, it's like a game, right? You're on one level, and then how do you get to the next level?
Right.
So that's what I do in my role as a coach. And I love that work, and I love that it also connects me with Leanne. And then the other part of my professional life is my daytime job, my full-time job. I work in the fintech industry for a South African company specialized in payments and security stuff. And there I'm responsible for our global partnership management.
Awesome. So like you're going to be able to bring, and this is what I love about everyone that I'm meeting, is that we combine so many different parts of our personalities and we express that in so many different arenas of our lives. So I love the fact that you're bringing two hats together. So this is like 2-for-1, an original special. So like I'm going to start at the beginning, because career coaching and executive coaching is individual impact, but as always, it's a multiplier, because as you lock in to your own self-confidence and you have more clarity as to where you're going, you can then, as that person, as the individual, then use your skills, refine your skills to do an even better job to find your path. But as we both know, that point is so difficult to get to, even being able to isolate how we even look for help. So in the course of being like executive coach, where do you recommend that somebody starts, or what kind of self-assessment should they be doing to even start this, to embark upon this journey?
Yeah, I think I want to make it a little bit broader, not just like it's executive coach, because just like it should apply to everyone at every stage of their career. Seeking out help is always a good advice, no matter where you are on your journey. One advice that I typically give, for also when I onboarded people onto my team, is ask questions and your network. This is where you can, from an early start in your career, early point in your career, always make sure that you have a network internally and externally. And this is a great resource for support, whether you need something very specific, like some technical expert to help you with something. Maybe you can even find a mentor to help you see the bigger picture, help you to see what are you really good at. Where do you maybe want to look at how can you develop certain areas where you're lacking a little bit, or maybe not, maybe just being aware of what you're not good at, and that's okay too. No, you don't have to, because that's always like when you assess strengths and weaknesses, and then or some coaches don't call it weaknesses, they call it areas of development. But don't stress about it. You don't have to be good at everything, right? The key is really to know what you're really good at and what you're not so good at, and then play to your strengths.
Agreed. Because I think someone once said, and I'm bad at quoting people, but I know that one person said it in sum total, unless it's kind of something stratospherically wrong, there's no real point in trying to work on all your weaknesses to that extent, because in sum total, they won't get you any further than if you focus on your strengths. Now, I'm not saying if you're obnoxious to carry on being obnoxious. I'm not saying that that's a personality trait, but it's kind of, as you said, being aware and actually asking, because what I've learned in my life, especially when I was at the beginning of my career, was even when I got feedback, sometimes I didn't agree with it at the very beginning. I didn't agree with it, but I actually didn't probe the feedback to actually say, well, hold on, I'm being told that this isn't great. Why isn't it great? It was more like, they're wrong. End of story. And I think that the part of developing and becoming more mature in any of this journey is that part about being open to question why somebody is giving you that feedback, so that when you come to the point, you can actually say, hand on heart, I disagree with you, because what you may not have known is, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. Is it still wrong? What should I have done better? And it's that level of never stop being curious, never stop questioning what it is that somebody says, because as part of the refinement process, nobody said progress was going to be easy. And it's never that you're just going to get to the top of the tree flawlessly, no correction. And I can still remember my very, very first boss, and she is awesome, and I'm still in contact with her. And I always likened it, she pruned me. Like, you come and you start and you're like, oh yes, I'm I know everything. But actually, she kind of cut off my branches to start to grow again so that I could grow stronger, and it wasn't easy. I didn't take correction. I didn't take feedback at the beginning of the journey well, but you have to kind of develop within yourself to say, if I'm being told this, there has to be some part of it that's true. It's not easy having that conversation with yourself. It's not easy looking in the mirror. But at the same point, whether this is at the beginning of an entrepreneurial journey and you're trying to get feedback on a product, whether this is at the beginning of your career, or as you said, looking to make the next step, there has to be a level of objectivity as to who you are, what you're trying to do, and why you're getting the same feedback in different forms. But usually there's a theme.
Usually there's a theme that applies to your strengths as well as your weaknesses. And I love what you said about curiosity. So approach it with curiosity and like, oh, that's interesting. I might not agree with that, but let's explore, right? What can I learn? What is maybe something that I don't see? Because when we talk about your personal brand, this is like the intersection of how you see yourself and how others see you. And getting that feedback is actually very, very helpful to shapen your brand and to make it more distinct. And so from my experience, I can just say that yes, you need to be open. You need to tame your ego. That's the little voice in your head that's always saying, I can't make any mistakes and everyone else is wrong. It doesn't mean that you should go walking around saying, oh, I don't know everything. You know lots of things, but be aware that you have blind spots. And by actively, and you can take control, right? You can actively seek out that feedback. So you can request it. And then it might land differently with you than just getting random feedback. And also keep in mind that not everyone is maybe very skilled at giving constructive feedback, making sure that it lands properly. So yeah, also there's that. And I just need to say on like knowing what you're really good at, and knowing your strength, and also the flip side, it's something that is very, very liberating, and then it's a very powerful thing if you can really go and stand there and like, this is me, this is why I'm doing it, this is how I'm doing it, and this how is what I'm really good at, and this is what I'm doing. So that's actually the essence of your personal brand. And when this seeking out feedback, so how others see you, I actually do this. I've done this exercise myself, and I love to do it with my coaching clients. Is I challenge them to reach out to 10, 15 people from different areas of their life and ask each of these the same question. What from your perspective, what are 3 things that I'm really good at? What are 3 things that I'm not so good at? And what is one thing that really makes me unique? And then you can work with that, and you will see some patterns.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And you know something? It's one of those ones where I've done this personally. Well, when I say I've done it, I didn't actively do it. It happened. I can still remember I got feedback a very long time ago. Like this was like really at the not beginning, but the first part of my career. And I got feedback from somebody that I believed didn't like me. And I was like, okay, here's this list. This is all the things that he says I'm really rubbish at. This is what he thinks of me, blah, blah, blah. Then I went to somebody else who I knew liked me. And I was like, look, this guy, he told me this. He doesn't really like me. But what do you think? And he's like, Leanne, it's all true. And I was devastated. By the way, I found out that the person I thought didn't like me, he actually did. But that's a side point. But the point was, I was willing to poo-poo the information from somebody who I believe didn't like me, therefore undermining the credibility of his opinion. And actually, to your point, when you go and ask people for feedback, they don't always have to be people that like you, because actually the people who may not be as close to you or may not be as fond of you have a better chance of giving you honest feedback, because actually they have nothing to lose. They don't have a deeper vested interest in the relationship per se. And then you can always cross-reference it with what people who do have more of a vested interest, be it your partner, your best friend, whoever, or like colleagues in a wider, broader team, just to see how far wrong or how far right that person is. Because I think sometimes we get caught up in who's delivering it rather than what they're saying. But your approach is awesome because it really challenges the breadth of your life, which will mean there will be a theme. Because even if the way you and I are together is different to the way I am in terms of dynamic with my husband, the fundamentals that make me me, the fundamentals that make you you, will always remain the same.
Yeah, no, that is true. And as long as you know what makes you you, then you can work with that, and you can adapt. And I think this is because we wanted to the topics we want to cover. One was like, right, what to figure out what you want. And I think really figuring out what you want, you need to figure out who you are first. That is the foundation. And from there, and this is not only because we talked about lots about strengths and weaknesses, but there's more to it, right? There's more to it, like what are your core values? What are your core interests? What gets you really excited? And does this in one way or the other show up in your professional life? And if not, how could you maybe bring it in? And also, what is your vision for yourself? And I don't mean like, oh, where do you see yourself in 10 years kind of question, because who knows, right?
Corona's already taught us, like the last year's already taught us, don't ask what we're going to see in the next year. Like nobody thought we'd still be at home. So, right.
I know, but when I talk about like vision, it's fundamentally, it's maybe your legacy that you want to leave behind, the impact you want to leave, what the things that are very important to you, and that's not changing.
Right.
Usually that's not changing. Yeah.
I think there's three things. You've said so much once again. So the first thing I'm going to say is, you're right. It's not changing. Once you find your higher level purpose, it doesn't change. It will remain the same. The question will always be, and I can once again take this back to a personal point, is the question will always be, how do I express my higher value in a way that it shows up in every part of my life? Because sometimes it is also very difficult to find that this is my core value, but I'm scared to express it, like these two parts. And I think that part of unlocking your success isn't necessarily correlative to I'm further up the tree of seniority. I think it's correlative to understanding what your higher purpose is and finding a way. And sometimes it does take bravery, and sometimes it does take boldness to mix your higher purpose with how you show up professionally, personally, and really putting that together. Because I think a lot of the time we focus on one part, and we focus on success purely correlated to salary, title, etc. But we forget the humane part, which is I care about A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And it's almost like you've looked at my notes that I scribbled together this morning, because they actually have like, success is not title and salary, but this is usually what we're being told, that this is what success looks like. So I think that's also a very valuable exercise for people to go through. How do I define success for myself? Right. And it's not about how does your company define success, how do your parents, your friends, the society you live in. It's just really what would make you very happy when you say I've got success. And I think it's, to your point, it's different areas of your life. And I just talked to last week I talked to two leaders, first-time leaders, and they reached out, and we had a little bit of a chat. And then we also touched on the whole person concept. And that is, we don't have our work self and then the other self. Like, we bring our whole self to the workplace. And that is something that we should be aware of, right? And I think, especially now that the borders between work and not work, they're very fluid. If I think I would feel miserable if I had to play a role every day, and if I couldn't be authentic. And this is also what, when you look at why people leave companies or what's important for them when they decide to join another company, is also, does it align with my values? Can I be authentic? Can I show up in the way I want to show up? And I don't want to be a completely different person during work hours compared to after work hours.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, like I would agree with all of that. But what I would say as when you kind of bring it down to the intersectional level as to what it is to be a Black woman in the corporate space, this is exactly the problem. And this is part of the reason why I do the work that I do, is because we don't get to bring our whole selves to work. It's not just, it's about how we wear our hair. It's about how we speak. It's about how we communicate. Are we assimilating enough to pass to be in the corporate space? And this is, and to your point, this is the reason why a lot of companies have the problems that they do when it comes to Black women and women of color, because they aren't. First of all, it's hard enough being a woman in a lot of spaces. Full stop, end of story. But the further down you go in terms of intersectionality, it becomes even more difficult, because the benchmark of success, or the line that is the measure, is we diverge from it like this. And this is, and you're totally right. And this is why the part of success, when you put it into the context of work, is the part of companies also have to meet people halfway, if not more than halfway, to provide the environment so that they can be successful. Because ultimately, if you on the one hand are thinking about your values and success and who you are as a person, and bringing yourself as a whole person to the office, but the office only wants you to be this much, you're always going to have a mismatch, right? And this is why, and we both talked about this is why what we do is complementary, because you can work on the person, but if the environment isn't right for them to thrive, then it doesn't work. You can work on the environment, but if the person hasn't done the work either, then you still have a mismatch in terms of the career part. Because as you're developing as the individual, you may very well outgrow your circumstances, which means you will be looking for something new, but there isn't that guarantee that something new that you're looking for is ready for you either.
Well, it is never a guarantee. But when I listen to you, that's why I love that our path cross, and that we have these exchanges, because you bring a different aspect to, when I say, like, don't be afraid to show up as your authentic self. Then that is from my perspective, and I think I'm in a context where I can safely do that. But from your clients and your experiences, that might not always be the case. So it's always good to check it, right? Like from where am I coming? And I love to be challenged on that. And yeah, I think if at some point, what did you say, you outgrow in your environment, and this is something that a lot of companies still need to get right, because if that is talent, that it's not just a number, it's not just a employee number 1, 2, 3, it's talent that is outgrowing your company. It's talent then that is leaving. It's knowledge and skills that is leaving. Because I believe that every one of us who is smart, who has something to bring to the table, eventually, some people it might take longer for them to figure it out, but eventually everyone is going to be like, if this is not working for me, then I will seek opportunities somewhere else.
Right.
And then this is like, you could do a business case around this. I'm sure. Right. And there's so many studies already, and
if we look at what the pandemic has done and is doing to all of us as people. And when I say all of us, please everyone remember, like, obviously we speak from our experiences, but also what we see within our frames of reference. But it's definitely put a lot of things firmly in focus, and one of it is people's awareness of social issues, but also of injustice, and also how not just how do I spend my money, but how do I spend my time? Who do I work with? Who do I interact with? Who are my partners within business? How do they operate? And all of these questions now means that people aren't always, at the very beginning, I thought this was going to be an employer's market, that people would be scared to leave, would be scared to make big steps. But actually, like myself, I left the job during the pandemic to be, because it's more important to me to be part of the solution than it is to perpetuate the problem. And people are starting businesses now in the last year more than ever, and they are value driven businesses. And as to your point, companies have to be aware of it, because they are losing talent. They are losing talented people with experience, with knowledge, because they are not choosing to change their values. They're not choosing to align their values with what people fundamentally want. And I think the more people have the opportunity to come in contact with their higher purpose and understand what it is they want to do, how they want to, obviously this is called making an impact, and you and I have both chosen our ways to make an impact. And it doesn't always have to be in business or anything like that. But once you choose your path to how you want to make an impact, how do you want to leave a legacy that changes the world for the better, not just lines your pocket? I think that's going to really have a huge impact on the business world as employees.
Yeah. And I think that's like getting to the stage where you really know what you want, in what type of environment you want to work, and what kind of legacy you want to leave. That is in itself, it's a process, and sometimes that can be uncomfortable. But once you have clarity on that, you're not off the hook, because this is where it then continues, because you might realize, okay, it's actually not me that is wrong. It's just the environment. It might be the company. Maybe I'm in a completely different industry.
Right.
So I just want to give everyone a warning. If you want to go on this path of self-discovery, there's more.
Right. There's more, and it doesn't stop, because life is dynamic. Well, if you're not evolving, then you're stagnating. That's simply it. If you're not moving, because time goes forward, you're by default going backwards. So it's not even as though you stop and you say, I've got there. You're never there. And that's not a bad thing, because going back to the point of being curious, your curiosity will propel you forward to look for new ways to create impact, to feel. And once again, basing the definition of success on your definition, Melanie, to find your way of feeling successful, which is very different. But the whole process of coming to that point is massively uncomfortable, from the conversations you lead within and without, from work and outside, the conversations that you lead in terms of, how do I get to the next step? How do people see me differently? What will I lose as a byproduct of standing up for my values? That might be friends, that might be colleagues. There's a lot to be considered. So it's not something you take lightly. And I would always say, it's definitely a path that needs assistance, because it's so important.
Yeah. And that's back to, seeking out help. I think at any stage, and you can seek out help. You can seek out help inside your company as connecting with a mentor, or someone who can just teach you hard skills. But also working with a coach, or someone you really trust, to help you really get an understanding of what is it that I want to do, what is it that makes me unique, what is my competitive edge, so to say. And it's hard to, there are workbooks you can buy, and like little exercises, it's all good. But it's hard to do this all on your own. So having someone by your side who can be part of that journey, and just someone who can have a conversation with, just like an hour, where you have that space, and that, just someone who's listening and maybe can guide you a little bit. And I've used this massively over the last couple of months when I was on my own personal journey inside my corporate world to go to that next level. And it's taken me 9 months to actually get there. Like it's not easy.
No.
And with the help of my coach and my mentor, it would have been even harder.
Right.
As no one does it on their own. And
Very
sometimes you don't
important
see
point.
that. Sometimes you don't see that whole team that is behind one person, and that one step
Right.
that
No,
person
you're
made.
right. No one does it on their own, for sure. No one does it on their own. And I still remember one of the things, like one of the exercises that I did myself was kind of dividing things into quadrants. Like, what do I like to do? What do I believe I'm good at? What don't I like to do? And what was the third one? What do I like? What am I bad at? That's it, right? Because some of the things that some of the things you don't like to do, you're actually good at them. Because it's one of those things as well that we always believe that the ladder goes up, right? You think you have to go up the ladder, and if you take a step to the left or the right, that it's a problem, when it's actually not. Because for me, going on the journey where I thought my journey would take me, it didn't. It took me somewhere else. So part of it is to keep checking in to say, well, is this what I want? Regularly checking in, like, where am I? Where do I stand? Because if fundamentally you're doing loads of things that you hate, the chances are you won't be as great as you're at your job or whatever it is you choose to be. You won't be great at it if the majority of the stuff you're doing you're hating. And that's where you have to kind of say, like, to your point previously, is how do I bring parts of what I enjoy doing into my day-to-day life? But hold on one second. There's this one. Knowing all the challenges you will be facing, how do you keep yourself motivated?
That's an
Do you want to go first?
that's an interesting question. Let me look at this again. All the challenges you will be facing. I think it's because I don't know what challenges you're referring to, but there's always going to be challenges. And I think how you keep yourself motivated is how your mindset. How do you what's a challenge for you, right? How do you frame this? It's a challenge, something like a big block in your way that you kind of have to climb over, and it's just effort, or it's a challenge, something that you can again explore with curiosity. It's like, oh, that's interesting. What is this? I didn't expect to come across this. And what is this challenge trying to teach me in that moment? Where do I have to do some growing and learning? And yeah, I think this is how I keep myself motivated in this constant world of change and challenges. To how do I see, what is the definition of a challenge? I mean, that is a question to that person who posted that question. But so I would ask you.
So like, I like your approach as well. So my approach is this, right? Before I embark upon any journey, I know there will be challenges, but the challenges are unknown. So for me, going back to the concept of I can only control what I know, or I can only control so much. I don't always think about all of the challenges I'm going to face. I take each step as it comes, because what I always tell myself is I have the breadth, the intelligence, the capacity to be adaptable and chameleon-esque to any situation. So if my fundamental way of thinking is a place of confidence, when the challenge, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that confidence, just to be clear, it doesn't mean you're always confident. That's not the point. But you all, like, the discussion I'm going to have with myself is, how do I get out of this problem? But I don't like to, me personally, I don't like to preempt problems. So that means, and sometimes it might be having a conversation with somebody. Like, for example, I am relatively I'm a risk taker. I like that. But let's say, like, my mum, for example, was always more risk averse. So I'm saying I'm going to go do, like, I'm going to say I'm going to jump off a building, and my mum's going to be like, do you have a parachute? Have you thought about it? Do you have the right shoes? And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll figure it out. It's not to say, but then sometimes it's having somebody there. But like, the personal motivation part is, I try to give less time and headspace to the challenges that I might face, because sometimes what you think might be the challenge, when you actually get there, it's not. It's not, you might think to yourself, hey, they're like, for example, I live in Germany. I think most of you know, and you have to put your picture on this on your CV. Now, you might think to yourself, "Oh my gosh, they've looked at my picture. They don't like me because I'm a black woman." It might not actually be the problem. You might get to the interview and it might be something totally different. So for me, keep motivated is just like, don't overthink the problems and be ready to deal with them when they show up, because spending your energy in dealing with unknown problems ultimately means you cloud yourself from even being successful because you're worried about that. Is my approach.
I like that approach, because it's like, where do you direct your focus?
Right.
And that's ultimate. Are you directing it? Yeah, and I love that where you said, be aware that there are challenges, but don't overthink them. Like, kind of almost like you cross that bridge when you get to it. And that reminded me of something, analogy, because what I didn't tell you, I'm also a passionate mountain biker. So sometimes you might see me on the trails going downhill with my full face helmet. One of my mountain bike coaches, she told me, and this is so true, and this is to your point, if you go down a rocky trail and there are stones and there are roots and other things that are in your way, don't look at this. Look at you have your line, and you look at where you want to go, and you don't look at that stone that you don't want to hit, because if you do, you hit it.
Always. And I can tell you that as someone who's fallen off a bike more times than I care to count. The fear already stops you from being able. The thing you're most scared of is the thing that you, as you said, the thing you're most scared of is where you always automatically fall. You think, I don't want to fall over that stone. Boop, stone, legs cut open, and it's always even worse. Agreed. I hope that's helped you with that, because self-motivation is a difficult one, especially when, and just being completely honest, and this applies in any sense, sometimes you just have days where you don't feel motivated, and that's got nothing to do with challenges. You just don't feel like it. It's just the day where you want to put the duvet over your head, read a book, or just sleep or listen to music, and it's also okay. Yeah, it's also okay to have those days. It's not that we always need to feel motivated, because the other side of it is that whatever we choose to do, success is, there's two sides of success. Yeah, there's the stuff that looks great and shiny externally, but it takes a lot of work. So you're not always going to be, yay, this is a party. And I think, in parts of framing success, and this is why sometimes conversations like this are even more important. And this is why it's always good when you see anybody who's successful admit to having a team, admit to having a coach, admitting to I've had a therapist as well, admitting to all of these things. There's no shame in it. It's just to say success isn't one person and one person only. It's a team. And you need support in whichever direction you choose, because if I say personally, going on a decision to have your own business, that's still a journey that you have to have the support of everybody else, and it's never just you alone. The decisions you make still have an impact. And I think sometimes we think of success as a silo. It's my personal success, but it's not. It's group success. It's collaborative though.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, and I think then also part of you being successful, if you find, well, I really did this well, share it, and don't be afraid to toot your own horn when the time is right, because only then you can create. There's two things that are happening. If you produce very good quality work and you make it visible, then you can actually use this to build your next, to move along on your path of success. But also in talking about it and how someone moved from A to B, that can also be very inspiring. So I always invite everyone to share their stories and don't hold back. And then also talk about who helped you and where were some real struggles or challenges. Because usually this is where we learn, and this is how we grow. And Leanne, I want to go back to one thing that you said. It's not always the path to success is not always a straight line. Sometimes you have to take a detour, and maybe you go, it's like a road trip, right? So maybe you get lost, but you discover something very beautiful that you didn't even have on your map, on your journey. So you can add that. You have that experience, memory, story, whatever it is. And sometimes maybe you have to turn around, maybe you're on the complete wrong path, which is also okay. And then you find another path that's going into a completely different direction. People at some point, like, there are cases where people are like, I've never actually wanted to work in that type of job. I never wanted to work in that type of industry. And if you're in that situation, and chasing success there, it's gonna be hard. This is where it always comes back to, what is it that you really want to do, and then figuring out from there. And also what you said earlier, where you ask yourself the questions, what do I really love to do? What I'm really good at? What am I? There's a concept that I also love. I actually have that picture in my office, but I use it a lot in my practice as well. It's called Ikigai. It's a Japanese concept, and I don't know if we can probably put links here or something, if people want to read up on it. And it's 3 components, how you can figure out for yourself what it would mean to be successful. And it's 4 things. It's what is it that you love, that you're really passionate about? What is it that you're really good at? To your point earlier, it might not always be that what you're really passionate about. Maybe you love painting, but you're not good at it.
Good at it,
okay,
right.
It's just an example. And then also there's this element of, what does the world need? Because fundamentally, we all want to make an impact and create change. And then also, what am I getting paid for? Because if I do something that I'm in this intersection of I'm good at, I absolutely love, and the world needs, but no one is paying me, then that ultimately it's not gonna go anywhere, because you might not be able to feed yourself, but you also don't have the resources to invest to make it bigger, right? So I quite love that concept of Ikigai.
How do we spell it?
It's can I put it in the chat?
Yeah, put it in the chat.
I don't know. I don't think I can put it in the chat. I don't see how I can.
How do you... Hold on 1 second. We can do it afterwards. I will share it. I will share it, everyone.
Yeah, but it's Ikagai. If anyone is interested.
Ikagai. Okay, good. I've shared it.
Thank you. There's a question.
Yes, there is, but I wanted to say just one more thing, because this is also going back to kind of like intersection analysis and bringing that extra part in, is that sometimes, part of... Oh, sorry. Thank you for correcting me, Pierre. Perfect. Part of the struggle, especially for a lot of Black women, is also the fact that our efforts are ignored. So even when you're doing all the right things and you're having the right conversations, you're saying, like, I have personally been there. Everything's on black and white. I've proven it. I've shown it. I've done it. I've done it again. I've done it again. And sometimes that's the issue. You kind of get to that point where you're frustrated and you don't know where to go, but you also you don't feel like you can risk jumping out of the frying pan, as it were, into the unknown proverbial fire. And at that point, I know, Ruth Smith-Allen, you have a question about mentors and sponsorship, but this is also where companies need to be a lot broader in terms of the support that they're providing, because there's education to that, because there are implicit, and when I say, I use the word implicit biases because I don't like unconscious bias, there are implicit biases that happen that actively work against you when you sit at that intersectionality. That means even if you're doing all the right things, you might not get there. So it might also be, in some cases, that it takes broader, and this is going back to why I also do what I do. It takes broader education to have particular conversations to change the systems that are also or are all so in place. And to your point, Ruth, here about mentors are great, but as we know, sponsors is what makes the change. That those are the people who change things for you. But in terms of using a mentor, do you think it's someone that you should know? I mean, all my mentors have been people that I've known. It doesn't mean that they've necessarily worked in the same department, but it's been a case of like you have commonality on some level, and they understand you as a person, and they help you apply their knowledge even if it's not in the same department. Because sometimes, this is just might be my personal experience, when they are in the same department, it can sometimes lead to friction at a certain point. But what do you think, Melanie?
Yeah, I just like on my own experience, I've had both. I had, as part of sometimes you find a mentor, right? It just happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes or you make it happen. It just doesn't happen. Actually, it's also, again, it's a very proactive thing to do and seek out mentorship. It's another thing where people sometimes be like, oh, this is awkward, I can't just ask this person to me. That's a whole nother conversation. But you find mentors in your workplace, but you can also find mentors in official. I love this. Like, thanks for all this help here, guys.
Yeah, like me too. Thanks, John. Thanks, Pierre.
Yeah. In mentorship programs, and there I've worked with mentors I didn't know before, but they had very good matching algorithms or matching logics, where you can get exposed to someone with a completely different view, because and have several mentors, right? You don't have to have one mentor. Have one mentor. Right. That is very close to your business, who might know you very well, but then also maybe have someone who they might work in a completely different environment. They might not. You actually have to explain to them more of your challenges or your aspirations or the type of work you do. And just by talking about it and getting questions from someone who is not familiar at all with your environment, that can also be very beneficial. So I would say it's not one or the other. It can be both.
Agreed. And do you know something? This is ridiculous now. Please don't laugh at me. I'm also a mentor, and I didn't know my mentee because I'm part of a mentoring program. And then like you said, Melanie, we're based upon our interest, or rather, it was based upon what I can help with versus what they were looking for. And completely different industries. So I think when you don't know them, it can be through like an official mentoring program. And when you do know them, then even I only had one mentor who would officially have called themselves my mentor, even though I have several. Like none of them would say, "Oh yeah, I'm Leanne's mentor." That wouldn't have happened. Only one potentially would have said it. But besides that, as you said, it's an unofficial thing, whereas sponsors are a little bit different. But I hope that helps, Ruth. I hope it helps. But you're right. Like, when I think back now, I mean, as you said, like with success being a collaborative thing, it's about, I'd say success in sum total is environment. It's like you and your mindset, but it's also the people who support you and develop you. And then, within the office, that might be a boss, it might be a senior leader. But it's not going to be just, and it shocks people, but the reality is success isn't purely from working hard. Because if that were the case, loads of people work really hard and they don't feel successful and potentially aren't successful by any kind of barometer that they would use themselves. So it's not just hard work. It's really a combination. But for me, the foundation of that is, to your point, always being proactive. And this is proactive about knowledge, proactive about building your network. And when I say proactive about building your network, it's not easy because people can always say no. But in some cases, that's the worst they can do, no, or ignore you. But yeah, there has to be, success won't happen if you just sit on it and expect it to come to you and drop into your lap. That's the one thing I do know.
Yeah, I hear this. Unfortunately, I hear this too often when someone said, "Oh, when the time is right," or I'm just waiting for the right opportunity to come across. It's a very passive approach, and it really, really happens because you see it in the classic corporate world. You see people getting promoted, and sometimes you wonder, I know this person is not very good at what they're doing. Why do they have that?
Why that?
Why the heck? Why? And it's because they have the network. It's because they're very good at talking about what they're doing. They're very visible. And yes, maybe also they are in an environment that just supports that type of person that there. But that's one aspect that you can't control. You can't control your environment. You can choose to leave that environment, but you can control to produce your best work, and we're all assuming you do that. But then the other component that you can control is also being very vocal about it, tooting your own horn. This is where I always love to talk about this self-advocacy and not the falling trap to the, what did I call it the other day? The tiara syndrome, where you wait and for someone to put a tiara.
Put the card and say, yes, this is me. Right. But I think we have to get past the concept of self-praise being no praise, because it's not necessarily it's not false praise. It's actually, if you're standing by the work that you've done and you've said it. But we also know, like, from a gender perspective, women, we aren't very good at that. We aren't very good at tooting our own horn. And that also takes, like with anything, it takes practice. It takes practice to start saying, hey, I'm, getting out of this self-deprecation, moving away from, I'm just okay, but actually kind of grabbing it by the horns and saying, you know what, I own it. I am good at this. I am good at this. I've been good at it, but I'm good at it because I have practiced, worked hard, and honed my skills, as opposed to, hello, people, I woke up this way. Because none of us are, like, you might naturally be naturally brilliant at playing the violin, but you still have a teacher. You still have to practice like a million hours.
And you still have to go on stage.
Right. So it's that part. It's that I can still remember, like, when I was at school and, languages came super easily to me, and I was like, okay, fine, this is great. But when I had to work for maths, I was like, oh my gosh, why do I have to work for this stuff? But the reality is, everybody was working, even the people that said they got 100% and didn't. We all have to work, but there's no shame in saying that you've put the effort in. There's no shame in saying that you've honed your skills to get to where you are. It's not luck. It's not just opportunity. It's the proactivity in the background, combined with several other factors that get you to that point. And that might be reading books, and it's also kind of being in proximity of other people who have a similar mindset, that say, be proactive. When I say similar mindset, I don't mean think the same things, but if you're around people who are naturally intellectually curious and just curious about life and feedback, it becomes a natural point. So everybody will evolve together. And I think there's a lot to be said of the influence. Your circle can influence your success as well.
That is very true. Because the people that are close to you, whether it's in your professional life or even maybe even more so in your private life, they can be a great source of inspiration and motivation, and also support. Right. And I think that's also from my experience, and I had to work through this, and I help people to work through that. It's once you figured out what is it that I want, then also being able to articulate that and allowing yourself to stand there and saying, this is me, this is what I've done, this is what I want to do, and this is what I deserve, and this is what I'm asking for myself now. And it is, until today, and I've just been through that journey where I had to do this a lot, and I had to be very consistent in my messaging, because you probably don't get a yes at the first attempt, because there's other stuff happening. But you have to allow yourself to ask for what you want and for what you deserve. And that can feel intimidating.
Or even ask for more. Because even if you think you won't get, the more you ask for, you'll still get more than you originally planned for.
Yeah.
because that's half of it. Sometimes we're so scared to, and you're so scared for the no, but you don't contemplate what happens if they say yes. You focus so much on the no that, like, the yes is like, oh no, they're never going to say yes, and then they do, and then what do you do with it? And this is why being ready and doing the work, and when I say doing the work, I just mean kind of priming yourself and questioning and everything and preparing and still always going back and retreading your steps. It helps prepare you for the possibilities of yes,
Yeah.
because a lot of people are not, and I say this as well, sometimes you're not prepared for success. Sometimes you're not prepared for the next step. You're focused on it not happening. That if you were to have all the things you wanted today, what would you do with it? Would you know what to do with it? Is like that. That's probably like another question for another day. But that's the other half of it. Unlocking success is half the story. Are you also ready for it? And if it was there today, do you know what to do with it?
And I would just like one more point on this, because I realized I might have sounded a bit obnoxious, like this is me and I want this and I deserve all of this. Yes, but when you request this, right, you want to be strategic about it, and you also want to think about what's in it for them. Like if I go into this role, this is how it would help my manager, how it would help the company. How can I make others look good with my success? When you think about selling yourself and being strategic about it. And Leanne, when you say, when I get the yes, when I, let's say, to the promotion, 100%, you're not ready. You have the potential. You have the potential. Right. And then this whole process starts over again. Like, okay, now you're there. And the skills you had, they brought you there. But in order to be successful on your new level, you have to learn new skills. You have to reframe a few things. Maybe you're stepping into, it's the first time you're managing people. Then there's a whole other thing that requires work. It's like not just how do I show up at work, what do I enjoy doing, but how do I see myself as a leader? And I think I got challenged on this morning actually, because I'm new in my current role. My manager, and that's speaking to the point that you see a good manager, he's like, okay, you're there now, but in the upcoming review, let's already think about what's your next step. And I was like, but I just got here. Like, let me find my, but he's so right.
Right. Because it doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop.
And I think for me, that's the point about intellectual. When I say intellectual, you know what I mean? Just curiosity. Let's just call it not intellectual. Let's just call it live curiosity. And this is why for me, curiosity is always important, because the reality is there is no final destination. Every destination is just another step. The step it will always keep going. And sometimes I think this is why we have to focus on enjoying the journey instead of focusing on a destination. Like, this is where I want to get to, because actually once you get there, that won't be the end of it. You won't sit there and go, okay, I'm there now. That's great. Thanks very much. You'll still be looking for more challenges. So I hope, I've enjoyed talking. Thank you, Kareem. We have a nice little comment here. Hi in the Philippines. It's something that we have to keep working on, because the more of us that come into contact with our own strength, our own internal strength, and understanding how this is collaborative in terms of building success, this multiplication effect of people doing better things, it affects everything. It affects the way we live. It affects the economy. It affects the success of business. It has such a huge potential for impact. Just one person being able to key into their own power, really.
Yeah, and it's beautifully said. It's like you can create a nice positive ripple effect.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. And so and it is work going through all of this, but then the question is, what's the alternative?
But I'd say it's work to go through it, but I would counter that and say, but how great will the reward be? It will be so much, you will feel so much better. The work isn't easy, but when you start to see change, and it starts to pay off, and you see the way you interact with people differently, you see the way people interact with you positively and also differently, it has a knock-on effect in so many more ways, just than on you. It changes the whole environment around you. So I have enjoyed this conversation. I know we both have to skedaddle today, but it has been fabulous. Everybody, Melanie is on LinkedIn, so please connect with her. Her details are in the invitation, but I will be posting more clips and everything, so you can find Melanie, LinkedIn, and wherever else she's on Instagram, everything else. So thank you very much. It has been awesome.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for all the comments and questions. Great.